Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today we got to talk about China, because in China news, dire Chinese cyber threats, that phrase is becoming a rather common term. Now this is rather unfortunate. Now if you didn't know, there were some hearings on the Hill today, and this was really interesting. I actually watched part of that one live. Now, there's a good write-up in Cyberscoop by AJ Vincennes, who I am basically cribbing from, but there was more that was said in there, and we're going to get to that in a minute. But here's the backdrop of what just happened and why this is a huge thing. The FBI and the DOJ used court-endorsed legal authorities to disrupt a botnet operated as part of basically a Chinese-directed hacking operation that leveraged essentially these insecure home and office routers that basically targeted U.S. critical infrastructure. That is according to the DOJ, basically today, talking in these hearings. Now, basically a Chinese government hacking campaign tracked publicly as Volt Typhoon used privately owned Cisco and Netgear routers infected with the KV botnet malware, basically in an attempt to conceal its activity of what it was doing, according to the agency. Now, the DOJ and FBI operation, as the agency added, quote, deleted the KV botnet malware from the routers and took additional steps to sever their connection to the botnet, such as blocking communications with other devices used to control it. Now, essentially what they're talking about is if they saw an open router that was infected with this on the internet, they simply went in and fixed it. Here we go. Now, an unidentified FBI agent described the operation in court records that were released this past Monday, writing that the Bureau issued a command to infected routers that would delete the KV botnet malware from the devices without affecting any legitimate files or information on said devices. As I just mentioned, now a December 2023 analysis by Lumen, that's a telecommunications company, showed that the KV botnet had been active since at least February of 2022. So we're talking about 2 years at this point, and targeted edge devices, including routers, quote, a segment that has emerged as a soft spot in the defensive array of many enterprises, compounded by the shift to remote work in recent years. In other words, people are not keeping up with their routers. They're not buying good ones, and many people aren't simply buying firewalls or routers with firewall capability. That's a huge problem. Think the Mirai virus prior to this in 2016 or so, that has been tracked back to Russian intelligence, where they were hacking these cheap routers, as well as DVRs and anything else that they could find open to infect it with the virus and then weaponize those devices for bandwidth attacks. Now, Lumen also observed, quote, an uptick in exploitation of new bots, end quote, in August of 2023, and then a remodel, quote unquote, of the botnet infrastructure around mid-November of 2023. Now, the disruption operation, first disclosed by Reuters this past Monday, is the latest U.S. government action, basically focused on Volt Typhoon, which basically came to light in May thanks to a Microsoft advisory. This is May of 2023. And for the record, this is not the first time we've heard that the FBI simply went in and did this. We learned about that news a while ago, but now they're basically officially saying this. Now, that advisory from Microsoft was followed quickly by a joint advisory issued by the FBI, NSA, and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, that warned of Chinese hacking operations targeting U.S. critical infrastructure and other sensitive targets. The threat is not quote-unquote theoretical, according to Jen Easterly, head of CISA, noting that CISA teams have, quote, found and eradicated Chinese operations across multiple infrastructure entities, and that, quote, this is likely just the tip of the iceberg, end quote. And I think she's 100% correct on that. What we discover is not nearly what it is. Now, General Paul Nakasone, he's the head of U.S. Cyber Command and the director of the NSA, basically told the committee that the Chinese government was making deliberate choice to target U.S. civilians. Quote, there's no reason for them to be in our water. There's no reason for them to be in our power. This is a decision by an actor largely focused on civilian targets. And yes, that is completely true. And we have seen this where, I've talked about this, how our water and wastewater infrastructure, and there's over 50,000 water and wastewater districts in the United States, something like 60 to 70% of them, per the Inspector General, are not secure and wide open. We saw Oldsmar, Florida, a couple of years ago get hit when somebody tried to introduce lye into the water supply, and thank God one of their employees happened to be walking by, see it, and undo that. Otherwise, we would have had a mass casualty event on our hands. But when you've got foreign governments basically being identified through their IOCs or indicators of compromise hitting your infrastructure, it's kind of a call to war. And we've been at cyber war for, in cyber warfare for at least a decade at this point, definitely longer than that, but at least a decade where it's really become active, especially in the ransomware era, which started around 2013, 2014 or so. And so this is obviously a very huge issue. And we're going to continue to see these kinds of issues. But one of the other things that was mentioned as well by the director of the FBI, Christopher Wray, as I was literally watching it, and not mentioned in the Cyberscoop article, is that the capability of basically the Chinese hacking divisions, meaning the PLA's division and any intelligence that they have, is roughly 50-1, even if you combine all allied nations, basically cyber capability and personnel together. Meaning, if we were to combine all of our basically hackers themselves that are working for the NSA, et cetera, along with all of the, let's say, the Five Eyes and other allied nations, there is basically a 50-1 ratio in China's favor of this, and they continue to expand that capability. So this isn't going away. This is a very serious problem, and God forbid we have some serious issues, such as they want to invade Taiwan, so they just shut off the water in the United States or start turning off electrical grids here, or God forbid, cause a meltdown, so we are too distracted and couldn't care less about Taiwan in that moment. So I think that's part of it as well. So either way, the news isn't good, but it is what it is, and we've got to be prepared for this, and so I guess you can't say you haven't been told. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP, and please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please, just please, attempt to stay private. Thanks, everybody.